So we just want to welcome everybody who has come to this amazing UCM, Universal Church of the Master educational series, and invite you to really allow yourself to take a nice deep breath, okay, to stretch your body. You may have been on Zoom meetings, you may have just come from work. We just invite you to stretch your neck, get comfortable in your seat. Hopefully, you have some liquid water or refreshment that you can have. And as we spend the next 2 hours together, exploring the divine masculine in everyone. I'm Reverend Janet Childs, and I have the privilege of being a part of the educational committee of our Universal Church of the Master. And we have an incredible treat for you tonight. This is something that we've dreamt of for many, many months to bring. We've had a discussion a couple of months ago on the divine feminine, and now we're going to explore the divine masculine and what being a man is like and what it means to be a man in today's world. What is missing and the spiritual essence of masculinity in all human beings, regardless of gender and regardless of identity. And that's very important because those are two very powerful ways that we categorize ourselves and categorize each other. So I cannot tell you how honoring it is for me to be here today with all of you who have taken time out of your busy day to really dive deep into these issues. And our wonderful Sean, Reverend Sean Imler, is a published author, an ICF certified coach, personal coach. He's a clinical hypnotherapist, a healer, a teacher, a trainer, a minister, and musician. And he's worked in Silicon Valley and beyond. He has been studying meditation, astrology, esoteric thought, and really read his book if you want an excellent read on the development of your spiritual practice. Personal growth, psychology, health, shamanism, and healing with sound for over 30 years. His practice, Blue Bear Healing, has been helping people with mental and physical health challenges, coaching, spiritual counseling, and teaching since 2012, on the heels of a successful career in the tech industry. He is devoted, and this is true, Sean is devoted to helping humanity heal its relationship with the planet and supporting Native communities in keeping their spiritual practices alive. And I know and have experienced how deep his dedication is to those last two dimensions that I mentioned. It's amazing. Our wonderful Mr. Christopher Love, who is joining us also in this wonderful dialogue, is a life coach who works primarily with men. And I can't tell you, Mr. Christopher, how many times when I have worked with men in critical situations that I have felt the need for them to have ongoing support in this issue. So I'm so glad to now have your name to add to the list of people I'm going to send them to. He has been interested in relationships, family, and community for several decades. His work around education, training, and community service has involved him with organizations, and these are heavy-hitting organizations, my friends, such as the Community Empowerment Network, Men's Division International, now called Mentor, Discover, and Inspire, Boys to Men Mentoring, Soul Quest Adventure Mentorship, the Mankind Project, which is an amazing project, International Community Service Day Foundation, and Landmark Education. Through his work with each of these organizations, Mr. Love has been able to deepen his understanding of what human beings need to live healthy, happy, connected lives. And I cannot tell you, my friends, We are in the midst of two giants who have been working in this field for many years and are going to share their wisdom. And thank you, Mary. We just saw blessings to you. We're so glad you're on. And so, what we're going to do in starting is I have created a candle for tonight. And I don't know if you can see it. It's a blue candle. And I have a little origami heart for the masculine in all of us, the many dimensions of the masculine, and how we can bring healing and wholeness to that. And I am in the position, as being a woman, of wanting to sit at the feet of these two amazing people as they share with us this detail. And so, as we light this candle, and Sean and Christopher, is it all right if I light the candle?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I'm just going to offer that in the lighting of the candle, we acknowledge the light of these two men and the light that all of us can bring to this topic, to this subject, and the light that we can be for and with each other in our ongoing work in the world. Because each of you are drawn to this particular seminar because you know and do work in the world for its healing and for its empowerment. And so we give you that wish. And what I would like to offer is Mr. Sean, Reverend Sean, Mr. Christopher, take us on our journey, and we await your wisdom.
Oh, thank you, Janet. Um, so I would like to give some context to how I perceived this evening going. Um, I'd like to not only open up a really in-depth and um, introspective dialogue with Christopher, but I'd also like to preface everything that we do tonight that the masculine and feminine exists in all of creation. It is in all things. It's in the seasons, it's in the plants, it's in the animals, it's in the solar system, it's in the galaxy, and it's in every human being. And so at some point, I'd like for us to actually experience, I'm going to do a guided meditation so that we can really not just talk about these things, not just experience them intellectually, but really embody them. I'm not going to do that now. I want to open up some dialogue first, but at some point, we're going to go into that place because I want to make sure that we all recognize that this is not an intellectual pursuit. We're using words and language to describe things because that's how we communicate with each other. Maybe when we reach the fifth dimension, we'll go beyond language and just be communicating from the heart. But at this point, it's important for us to be able to use our voice, use our throat, use our will, and explore in that way. But so much of this lives in the transformative experience, what is often called the divine marriage of masculine and feminine as they exist within all things in all humans. So I want to get there, and I also would like you to keep in mind that the yin yang symbol itself from Chinese medicine is two fields that contain a little bit of each other within them. So we're not talking about just men and women. We're taking this beyond that and looking at what are the motivating principles behind who we are as human beings, regardless of gender. When I found out that there was going to be a talk on the divine feminine, and I was actually invited to participate in that to give the divine masculine perspective on that conversation. I couldn't attend. And so they asked me if I'd be willing to do that at a later date. And I said yes, because, that's what you do. You say yes, and then you see what happens. While that space of time was occurring, I attended the a May 1st celebration that Christopher invited me to, and had a moment where in the ceremony that we had put together, we were creating a hole in the ground that we could drop the maypole into. And Christopher was facilitating the men going out to find the tree that was going to be the pole for that celebration and that particular part of the ceremony. And while we were standing there before actually taking this tree down, um, Christopher started speaking about the masculine. And when he did, I had this epiphany that this was the man that embodied the essence of the masculine quality, both as who he is as a human being and from his intellect. That he had studied this, he embodied it, he was passionate about it. I knew this about Christopher. He had invited me to a couple of other events that I didn't attend, so I knew this about him. But when I heard him speak, I knew that I needed to have him here on this particular call, and I'm so grateful, Christopher, that you came to join us, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Um, so what I'd like to ask you about, Christopher, is that moment where we were having that conversation with the men before we were getting ready to take this tree down to act as part of the masculine principle within this ceremony. Um, you were talking about something very specific, which was about the threaten. How do I put it? It's like the threatening of the masculine, the toxicity of the masculine that many people are talking about now in social forums. And so, without going into a bunch of history, I want to just dive right into that. What did that bring out for you?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, gosh, that's you don't mess around here. You
Let's
just
get
want to
to
just drive right in there, you know, it's funny. Usually these talks start out a little bit like, let's have some history, and we'll talk about the divine masculine and feminine over the ages, and and now, hey, you're just like hitting it right on it. Where are we at right now, right here today? And that's a really powerful thing. So I just want to start off by just saying it's really an honor for me to be here tonight. I feel grateful that you would invite me, to the trust, with your audience and people whom we have never met before. So I just thank you for that as well. This is a subject that's really passionate to me, and I appreciate of trouble here in our world today. And hopefully it's through dialogues like this that we can kind of understand where we're at and how we got here, and perhaps be able to forge dialogue that will lead to actions that will help us make a better world for ourselves as we move forward. So, so as far as your question goes, you use that buzzword, and that buzzword is definitely one of those ones that I like to jump on, and that's toxic masculine or toxic masculinity. And that is something that's being thrown around in the social media right now, and it's really unfortunate. And I'll tell you why. The reason that I believe it's unfortunate is because in my research of what is masculine, what is feminine, what are those qualities that you spoke about at the very beginning of your talk, which is let's look at, or I think Janet talked about the all of the nature, like everything that we have around us, has the masculine and feminine elements within it, right? And so, when we start talking about that these elements are toxic, it's a little bit alarming to me, because I want to go back to find out what are these elements, okay? And are these elements, is there something here that's beyond gender? Is there a principle, the masculine principle? Then we have roles, the masculine roles, the feminine roles, all these kinds of things. And then we have, of course, the subject of gender, which has gotten very gray in these modern times as well. So when we talk about one of these things, we have to start to understand what it is that we're actually talking about. It's such a large subject, actually, We can have one term, but then what led us to the understanding of that term? And are we all on the same page of what that is? And so when we have these dialogues, we have to create some kind of a common understanding or a foundation so that we know what we're talking about. So we're all talking about the same thing. And so to step back a little bit, I would just say, when we're talking about the masculine principle, we're talking about something that I think the ancients have talked about as a force of nature that is creative, but it's a downward moving force, and then there's an upward moving force they would call the feminine. And that these two forces, when they work together, they meet, and that's where creation occurs. Okay? And it doesn't matter what religion or what tradition you're in. I just trust that everyone has some type of a model in their own traditions where they can see this play out. And so we see this happen in nature a lot. And we see that there has to be some type of a principle at work that moves energy in one direction. And then there's a principle at work that moves energy in another direction. And it's with those two energies that we get life, right? And one of the things that I like to use as an example is if you put two kids that weigh exactly the same on a teeter-totter and say play, but you're not allowed to jump, you're not allowed to push off with your feet, it's not going to be very much fun, is it? Because they're just going to balance there. Just total equilibrium, right? Like that. So there has to be some kind of a force that makes that teeter-totter move. And so what we're talking about is these upward and downward moving currents in our universe. And so there's a lot of different aspects that are attributed to those, right? So when we start talking about masculine and feminine, the first place I have to go is tradition and what has been traditionally masculine or traditionally feminine, because that's where we came from and that's what we know. And then when we bring it up, and I kind of want to, because that's such a huge subject, right? And we can get into that in we've got a lot of time on this call, so we can get into that. But if I say that there's something wrong with that, it doesn't matter whether we're talking masculine or feminine, but if I say there's something wrong with this principle of masculinity, no matter what your concept of that is, we might all on this call, every person on this call may have a different concept of what masculine is. Everyone may have a different concept of what feminine is. But if I take the word toxic and put it in front of either of those two words, then I'm saying that whatever it is that you believe that is, I'm saying that there's something wrong with it and that it's inherently bad. And that's where I separate myself from that concept, because I'm not coming from a place that anything's wrong or anything's bad. I will say that there are things that need to be looked at, and we can do things differently that may get different results. I'm all about what are the results. And we may like the results that we get sometimes, and we may not like some of the results that we get. All we have to do is adjust how we're acting or thinking to get different results. And if I can learn from however it was that I was being that got me the results that I got, so that I can create different, what I did was wrong. When I put the term toxic in front of masculine, I'm disenfranchising people from the masculine principle. I'm disenfranchising children and young men and boys from masculinity. And there's nothing inherently wrong about masculinity. It's just a principle. So we have to really get into understanding what is that principle to be able to really move forward in the conversation. But I will say that inherently there can't be anything wrong with it at all. And so then the question is, if that's true, right? So some of you might be right with me on this, and some of you might not. Some of you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, but what about, I saw on the news yesterday, and what about the shootings? And what about those men that did that perpetration? And what about rape? And what about all these terrible things we see in politics today? Men acting out in horrible ways, not really thinking about people, not having compassionate hearts. Uh, Leaders of companies and corporations making decisions that harm people. And you have to say, well, isn't that toxic masculinity? Isn't that an example of toxic masculinity? And so that there's something wrong, and a lot of times it's men that are doing the wrong, or let's just say people in male bodies, or male looking bodies even. So it's like, oh, well, what is that then? Well, if I'm going to listen to this man say that there's nothing wrong, and that there's no such thing as toxic masculinity, that's going to challenge what I'm seeing on the news every day, or what I've seen happen in my neighborhood even, or in my own family. My own father who acted out and hurt the kids. What is that? And so we have to start having a dialogue to really start to understand one another, to find out what this is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Um, when you consider what the difference between divine feminine and divine masculine are compared to what masculine and feminine are, how would you distinguish the divine from the mundane?
That's a really good question also. You know, where I'm coming from is I think it's all divine. And the reason I say that is that if I say one thing is and one thing isn't, I'm not sure that that can exist within my framework. It's either all divine or it's not. It's either all God or it's not. It's either all a miracle or it's not. I mean, just this whole existence, just the fact that we're even having this conversation, that we have these bodies and these hands and these eyes and these mouths, and that we can learn what we learn, that we live on a planet that's moving through space at 900 miles an hour and spinning at 90 miles a second. Astronomical. What are the chances in the spectrum of light and dark, of radiation and hot and cold, that we can even exist? And so, how can anything be anything other than a miracle? Every little thing, all of it. And how can anything be less than divine? And so that leads us back to that same question is, well, what happens when it's not comfortable? What happens when people are getting hurt? What happens when I feel that pain in my heart? What happens when I see someone do something uh, without thinking for the betterment of all? Those are the really tough questions. How do we find the divinity in that? What's the miracle in that? Right?
And you could say that there is an imbalance between the masculine and feminine as they exist in divinity, as we experience them as personalities in human form. And the reason for that is that each one of us doesn't have the right balance of masculine and feminine within us. And so whatever is dominant based on, just the energy of the planet, the energy of the solar system, the era that we're in, we experience an overabundance of one, and then society reflects that, in its structure, in its growth. And that is actually changing now as well because everything goes through cycles and everything is in motion, everything is in change. And so it seems that what we experience is the divine always present and maybe an overabundance of the masculine archetype as it expresses itself through humanity. And we get to see the shadow side because when something is overexpressed, all parts of it are overexpressed, the dark as well as the light. So, do you have any comments on that?
Hmm. Good. You got the best questions I think ever. So I think I want to go back to the idea of toxic masculinity to talk about this. And the way that I'll do that is to let's just go ahead and answer some of these questions, you know, and then and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. So I was doing a conference here in Santa Cruz a while back. We had all the heads of all the major organizations that help children at this conference. And I was representing one of my organizations. I was actually representing two organizations at the time. And we had a man who stood up and said something about the toxic masculine. And and I said, whoa, 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 whoa. We're going to have to, before we move forward, we're going to have to really address this. And the question came up, which I brought up a moment ago. It's like, well, if there's no toxic masculine, then how do you explain how men have been perpetrating women and most of the wars? You don't see that the people in women's bodies, or what we perceive as women's bodies, you don't see that they're the ones calling for war all the time and causing all the mayhem on the planet. Okay? And so I'll give you that, right? And they says, well, how do you get to explain that then? Isn't that the toxic masculine? And I said, well, just because somebody's in a male looking body doesn't mean that what they're doing is toxic masculine. So we're going to have to really talk about what is masculine. What is that principle, right? Okay, so I've been doing a lot of research. That's one of my studies. And I'm doing that not necessarily through books and paperwork, but through people, like by actually holding in-person meetings with men for decades. And what I've found after having interviewed and worked with literally hundreds of men is that there are certain guiding principles that seem to be inherent within the gender of masculinity, right? And they're passed down often by father to son, father to son, father to son, like this. And when I think about what is masculine, if I think about if I'm exhibiting the masculine behavior or masculine traits, they are traits that are akin to things like a code of honor. They're like integrity, structure. They're like the backbone that helps us build our society. They're all the rules. They're all the dogma that helps hold things intact so that we can actually be here. And sure, there is times to throw dogma out the window, and we hate that word dogma. But at the same time, if you're wanting to make it across the ocean by boat, you surely want that boat to be a solid structure, and you want it to be able to hold out water and have integrity, right? Any leaky boat, and you're not going to make it all the way over to your destination. So I look at the masculine principle and the way that I've studied it to really be akin to the structure that builds and creates anything, and about the code of what it means for me to be a man. And for my father passed on to me, he said, there's only two things that you can keep in the world. You can keep your word and you can keep your integrity. He said, by and large, absolutely everything else can and will be taken away from you at some point in your life, including your life, right? Now he further went on to say, now how you hold or keep your word and your integrity will absolutely determine who you are in your community and how people will react to you, what they will bring you, what doors will open for you. And that was just one of those pieces that was passed on from father to son. Oh, I have to do this. I have to keep my word. I have to maintain my integrity. Then we have to start talking about what is integrity. When I think of the masculine, I'm thinking structure, integrity, keeping your word, being honorable. I love the word honorable. And these are old values that have been passed on for thousands and thousands of years through the masculine lineage, right? So when I'm thinking masculine, I'm thinking like this, honor, okay? There is no room in my worldview for toxic masculine because masculine has a meaning in itself that needs nothing else to define it. It itself is a something, right? And so they challenged me and they said, so, well, now what about these men that are acting out in such a way that they're harming and destroying and the rainforest and the trees? And I said, well, what makes those honorable men? What makes those people who are following any type of masculine principle? What's masculine about that? To explain to me what is masculine about perpetrating and hurting and harming and destroying. I was like, I don't see that as the masculine principle at all. And they said, well, what is it then? And I said, well, that's a really good question, and we should explore that. So, of course, I'd already done my research and explored it for myself. And I'm encouraging everyone who's in this inquiry to make that inquiry for themselves. Like anything that you hear on tonight's call, I encourage you to do your own research. Don't ever take what anybody says for the truth. Always look for yourself and find the truth for yourself. That's so important. But I will tell you this, that what I found for myself personally is that all of this acting out that we see that's destroying our world and making it unsafe for children and for women isn't masculine at all. So they said, well, what is it? And I said, well, before I answer that, let's do this. Let's go back to childhood. And I said, prepubescent children. Okay, so now we're all hopefully we'll be all in agreement that the prepubescent children aren't acting out in male authority or feminine authority, or there's no matriarchy and patriarchy with the children so much. And we see the kids just running around. I was a preschool teacher, so that was I had a little stint as a preschool teacher. I have a background in early childhood education, so I love the kids and watching the kids play. And I see things shift around, and there's gender roles shift and change fluidly, right? Now, there are certain ways a lot of the boys act, and there's certain ways a lot of the girls act. But then there's always the crossover as well, right? So I asked this question of everyone here, and I asked the question of the people at the conference. I said, would you say that children have power? What do you think? What's the answer to that one?
I would say they have power,
Yeah?
context.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet they do. Children have a lot of power. It may not be focused. Or is it inherently masculine power or feminine power? That's the next question.
That's actually a deep question,
Yeah.
because, as I pointed out earlier, archetypally, everything has light and shadow. And, you could say uh, there's a destructive feminine principle. You know, Kali, the goddess of death in the Hindu pantheon, is about death and destruction, tearing things apart. Um, some might attribute your example of tearing down the rainforests in Borneo as a patriarchal or masculine endeavor, um, but archetypally, it might be something completely different. So, so what would a child express? What would children express? I don't think that they have as much masking as adults do. They just act from universal principles
Hmm.
because they have not actually absorbed enough of our impression of personality, impression of what it means to be masculine and feminine from parents and teachers, etc. They're still malleable enough that they can just be whatever comes up.
Right. I'm right with you, brother. So I'm saying absolutely, absolutely. It is pure power, pure, unadulterated, without concept power. Right. Okay. So if that exists in nature, pure power, right, without us putting our labels on it, then can pure power be used for positive? Can it be used for the negative? Can it be used to build? Can it be used to destroy?
All of the above.
All the above. Okay. So there was a much more defined way in which children became young adults, which became men and women in the past, in a lot, if not all cultures. I've not studied all cultures, so I cannot say for certain. But I can say for most of the cultures that I've studied, there's an actual process by which children go through so that they become adult members of their village, their clan, their tribe, their society, where they know who they are, they know why they're there and what they're there to do, and then they are able to act accordingly and be of support to the other people that they live with, right? And by and large, we've lost that in this modern age, and here in the West particularly. So if we think about the male initiation, since tonight's topic is more about the masculine than the feminine, if we think about the male initiation, which has been missing for some time, we have to let's talk about what does that look like, you know. And one of my first, one of the things that got me into this in the first place was Robert Bly's book, Iron John, which goes through myth and mythos of the wild man, and through that we get to actually understand what the wild man is, what the warrior is, you know, what the soldier is, and what the civil man is, so we can kind of determine who we are and how to be or act, right? And this initiation occurs that has a young man wrestle with and move through challenges that bring him into a place of manhood where he's going to carry this new lamp or this new torch. And by and large, that's been missing in our society. And to let's give a tangible example. So, you know, I this is something that I've been bringing back as well. We've been leading these teen sojourns and taking teenage boys out into nature for a week. One of the things that they do is they have to sleep for the first time by themselves. Okay, they have to go out and find their little camp, and of course, the mentors get to know where that camp is, so we check on them and stuff like that. But they have to go out there and spend that first night alone. There's a lot of different challenges that happen over the course of that week, where they have to really face their fears, and their belief systems, all the things they've been taught, all those kinds of things. And in the old days, it's been known that the women were in cahoots with the men about the male initiation. They knew that this had to happen. The women did not want to see their boys go off with the men because they knew when they came back they wouldn't be little boys anymore. And the women didn't want to lose their little boys. But they knew that for the safety, the security, and the longevity of their tribe, their sustainability, they knew that it was an absolute crucial process in the becoming. So they had to go along with it. They were in cahoots with the men. So the men might come in the middle of the night when it was time, and they'd grab the boys out of their beds, and the boys would be like, no, and screaming, and mommy, and the mom is going, no, don't take my son, and she's playing right along with it to make it look like she's trying to hold on to her son, but she knows the men have to take that boy. And they take the boy out into the woods or the cave or wherever they go up on the mountain. And one of the things that they're going to talk about when they talk with these boys, and as they're going through their different rites of passage, initiation, facing challenges, fears, all these kinds of things, at some point when the boys are ready and they're ready to receive, they've broken down all of their resistance, they have a heart to heart. One of those things that they'll say is, when you go back to the village, you will be a young man. You will no longer be a little boy. You don't get to pull your sister's hair anymore. You will learn to be a champion for those weaker than you. You will stand for what's right and what's just. And you will be a protector of women and children. And us men will be watching because you are one of us now. We have brought you into the fold, into the circle of men. And we will be watching. And when these boys go back as young men to their families, they're different. They're not the same. And there's an accountability in the brotherhood. And we don't have that anymore either. There's no accountability. Our country's going crazy. There's no accountability. Everybody's doing whatever they want to, and they can do it as long as they don't get caught, right? And then if they get caught, they have lawyers and attorneys and fight it out, and they still might not get in trouble. They still might get acquitted. They still might get a little slap on the wrist. No accountability. Whatever you want to do. And the reason that I brought you here is because what I'm going to say is what everyone is calling toxic masculinity is actually young men in adult male bodies acting out from an arrested state of adolescent development. And that place is where we haven't gone beyond the concept of I, me, and mine. Everybody knows when children are in I, me, mine stage, right? Anybody who's had children? Mine, 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 I, me. Whatever, that's yours. Or, I want what's yours, now that's mine. Mine, I, me, mine. And so I see these men acting out. It doesn't matter. I don't care how much money they have. Multi-millionaires, billionaires. If they're acting from a place of I, me, mine, without thinking of and having compassion for everyone, they are acting from an arrested state of adolescent development. They never grew up. So I don't care if you're the head of a corporation, a CEO, you have billions of dollars in the bank. I don't care if you're the head of a country. If you're acting from this place, you actually have no business being in the position you're in because you're still a child. And as far as I'm concerned, that would be a good step that we could take as Americans, is to actually fire these people from office and from being CEOs of corporations and places like that if they are acting as children. And that would be a good step toward accountability.
That's a really it's a very interesting way of framing it, and it begs the question: how would you identify healthy masculinity and apply any sort of test to someone to ascertain whether or not they had achieved it?
I'm going to have to ask you to say that again because the internet froze in the
Oh,
moment. Yeah.
okay. Um, how do you identify healthy masculinity, and what test would you employ to determine somebody had achieved it? And you don't really have to answer that. It's more conjecture, but because there's probably a huge gray area in there, and there are probably other factors to keep in mind, like what sort of responsibility does the person have, what authority are they trying to utilize or exert, what position are they holding, and knowing that nobody is just black or white. That would actually defeat our entire conversation, but that there's an entire field of gray in which we're all trying to mature into that sacred marriage of bridging the gap between masculine and feminine within each other and in ourselves and in our society, in everything that we consider life.
Wow. Well, I'm a big action person. I love action. I love to see how things play, right? I don't know that it's something that we're going to be able to test for, you know? I don't know that the test would be accurate, or that we could actually provide a test. Perhaps we could. I'm not a psychologist, so that wouldn't be my realm. Um, but what I can say is that action speaks louder than words. I've been hearing that ever since I was a little kid. So it's really about seeing how a man or a woman acts. You can tell whether someone is thinking for the better good of all when they make their decisions, or whether they're thinking about themselves or special interest groups.
You brought up a question in my mind, which was there are initiations that take place on the streets, in the hood, amongst gang
Hmm.
members. So there are different levels of initiation, and the initiation that you're talking about um, is one that I would consider a healthy initiation. And the thing that is key to it is in the description that you gave of the men who are telling the boy who's now going to go through his initiation and become a man, you have to find integrity. You have to have honor. You have to defend those that are unfortunate. Those are elements that only a healthy man would actually be able to communicate to that initiate, as opposed to when you're on the streets and in a gang and you are going through an initiation, there are completely different factors that are important to that initiation. And there's a huge division between what is actually healthy for society and what's not healthy for society. So we are the creations of those that created us. Everything that we absorb as children, we do so defenselessly because the brain doesn't have the capacity when we're children to apply reason and logic to what it's absorbing. That brain is just a sponge, and it takes as example what it means to have opinion, what it means to have a belief system, what it means to perceive and apply logic to something. And so you build who you are based on everything that you take in around you. And so it's very interesting to me that we live in an environment now where in many ways, our influences now are not just at home. They're not our parents. They're the videos that we see on TikTok. They're the channel that we don't that our parents didn't turn off as a being an 18 and older channel, and kids are able to watch, whatever our X-rated content might be on the TV. So we're taking in that these things are okay without the ability to apply logic and reason to it. And so how do we fix that? What do we need to do? And who do we need to support in terms of being a good example for the rest of society? How do we communicate that to each other and take responsibility for how everyone has allowed society to become what it's become?
Hmm. That's awesome. So I just want to acknowledge that that's a masculine principle. You're jumping right to the solution. Like, how are we going to fix this? That's just a funny thing because that goes around our circles all the time. It's like men always want to jump in and problem solve immediately. We have a hard time generally with just being uncomfortable, being in that space where, well, we just opened up a mess, and now what are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? Okay, well, you get to work. You grab that. Let's get task oriented, because as soon as we get task oriented, we start to feel more comfortable. We got something to do. We have something to identify with. We're moving in a direction. That kind of thing. But where we're at right now is we're still in the middle of the uncomfortability of we got a real mess on our hands, right? And we don't know. There's too much unknown. We've taken the house of cards and we've thrown it up in the air. We don't know how it's all going to come down. So I've worked with gangs. I actually learned. I got certified to work with gang mediation. I didn't follow through with it because I had a son, and I decided it would be a little bit of a risky job, for having a young child. However, I have been able to work with some gang members, and I've had some. I also do recovery coaching as well, besides life coaching. So I've been able to work with people on that level and helping them get out of the thralls of addiction to different substances and such and whatnot. And we also had a boy. We haven't had a gang member come on a sojourn yet, but we did have a young man from inner city Chicago who came from a gang neighborhood, and his sister was in a gang, and they'd been trying to recruit him to get into the gang. And when they couldn't get him, they got his sister because they figured that would get to him. And he was still trying to fight that and not become part of that gang. And he'd been witness to drive-by shootings and all these kinds of things. And let me tell you, this boy was rock solid. He was, man, whew, he wouldn't cross the creek. I mean, he'd never been out of his neighborhood. It's amazing. When I worked in inner city Oakland, at-risk youth. And when I worked up there, the kids that I met that had never been out of their neighborhood, it was astounding to me, right? And for those of us who have privilege to be able to travel and see amazing things and go into nature and all this, imagine just growing up with nothing but the concrete jungle. All you know is what people teach you, pretty much. That's your knowledge. I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up with the nature. I grew up with farmland and playing in creeks and fishing and all those kinds of things. I know how to make fire by hand, and I teach wilderness skills and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun, right? But imagine if you grew up with nothing but concrete around you, and the only thing you got your information from was the people in your neighborhood. And let's say it was a pretty rough neighborhood, and people die there regularly. And there's business there that looks like it would help you get out of your economic depravity. And to be a part of that business, you have to join the club. And to join the club, you have to go through initiation. My son, my son's classmate, when he was in high school, my son's now 28. He graduated UC Berkeley. He's in a good place. Okay, I'm not worried about him anymore. But one of my son's classmates when he was in high school was shot to death, literally just a mile away from his high school, from a gang shooting. And it was one of these initiations. So they were inducting a young man into the gang, and for him to be a full-fledged member of the gang, he had to shoot somebody. And it happened to be somebody from my son's high school. And so this is exactly what you're talking about. These are the values that are being passed on in that system. So we have to really take a look at what are the values that we're going to want to pass on. Now, I don't actually really care anymore about whether you're going to call them masculine or feminine. We gotta look at and see what kind of values we want to be passing on to our children. What is integrity? What is honor?
Yeah.
How do we want to live here? What are we passing on? Because, like you said, where are they getting their information from? If they're not getting their information from the local, hoodlums, they're getting their information from television and from video games, like Grand Theft Auto and things like that, right? It teaches you how to be a hoodlum. The best hoodlum wins the game. You got to burn more cars and steal more loot, and and those are the kind of games that kids play today, along with the shooter games, right? And so what kind of values are we passing on to the children? So we really have to start asking those questions. What are we passing on? Whether or not we're going to bring back the old age of rites of passage and initiation for young men and women, we at least have to tackle a conversation about what do we want as the guiding principles and values of our society, and what do we want to continue to pass on to our children in that regard. Because what I see happening is it's a free-for-all. It's just like, whatever you want to do, that's what this place is about. As long as you don't get caught, you can do whatever you want, even if it means hurting somebody. And that's one of the values that I see being passed on right now in our society. And it's really troublesome. It really is.
So I want to see what you think about something. As humanity has evolved and we developed the ability to express ourselves through language, communicate, and from there learn to grow crops and learn to make tools. As we've progressed into a more intellectual state, we've also disengaged from some of the things that our ancestors did for thousands and thousands of years, which was hunting, gathering. Men had the ability through their action to express this archetypal, aggressive, go get 'em, do things very deliberately, very sharply, to be on point with exercising this energy that naturally runs through all human beings, but men got a little bit of an overabundance of it. So because society has changed, we've had wars, obviously, but Now we're getting to a place where these wars don't happen quite as frequently as they used to. There's a lack of being able to express oneself because things have become easier, more attainable. We've become more comfortable, and that feels like it may actually be reflecting itself through the shadow part of the masculine principle and maybe expressing itself through the shadow part of the feminine principle as well. How do you see that our evolution at this point in time has affected some of the decisions and lack of integrity that we are experiencing in society now?
Mm. Well, I think I have to just go back to this whole the concept of the shadow. You know, the shadow for me is not masculine or feminine. The shadow for me is really just adolescent behavior or uninitiated behavior, behavior that's not wise. You know, and it may play out through what looks like a man or a woman, but I'm not. I'm still not in the belief at this point in my research uh, that it's actually masculine or feminine. It's just it just is a power. It's a power, and it's a misuse of power. And so a man can misuse power, a woman can misuse power, a transgender person, a non-binary person can misuse power. So let's talk about that for a second, because if you have someone who's non-binary, who's not identifying with either the masculine or the feminine, and they misuse power, what are you going to call it? Is that the shadow of the non-binary? So, I want to just make sure that we're kind of staying on the same in the same conversation, and it's like I want to get to a place to where we can embrace the masculine principle in its whole and entirety as a healthy thing, as a healthy, not only a concept, but it's an actual, almost an entity in itself. It's a power that's in the world, but it's for the force of creation. Now, the same thing with the feminine. And you did bring up Kali, which is interesting. And I understand this is a universalist church, so we can talk about anything here, right?
We
Yeah?
can
Okay,
go
I see.
absolutely anywhere.
Absolutely, yes.
I say, go there.
Go there. It's so wonderful because we're living in a time also where people are so polarized. We can't have these type of conversations generally, and even within families, people are saying, "Oh, well, you believe that? I can't even listen to you anymore." And it's like, I don't expect anybody to actually believe everything that I say or get like as the gospel truth. I say, learn for yourself. But can we all just at least talk about what we believe or what we've learned up until this moment? Because everyone is a force of God in my eyes. Everyone has their perspective, and let's put all these perspectives together in one place and let's talk about it. What did you learn? Where did you come in from, and what was your experience? And then we can come to new conclusions potentially, or maybe we might say, oh, I still believe what I was believing coming into this conversation, and this was really powerful, and I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to reflect and to mirror and to offer new information or perspective. And I think that's crucial. So I'm glad that we can do that here. That's very refreshing. I'm so grateful. So so Kali is an amazing concept, and I've studied Kali, so I can tell you a little bit from my understanding of that. And if you really get some of the symbolism of Kali around what we would consider to be destruction, and the appearance, she's definitely a goddess that doesn't have a lot of what do you call appeal as far as like looks. She's pretty scary. So wearing skulls and you know
Unless that's your thing.
things like that. Unless that's your thing, right? And so, but you have to get a lot of, and Hinduism, remember, is a monotheistic system, and people in the West believe that it's a polytheistic system. And actually, when I took world religion at the university, it they taught it as a polytheistic system, which was absolutely incorrect. So I actually had to go to India, and I had to go study it for myself under a master who was born and raised Hindu, and found out that this isn't true at all. So each of these gods and goddesses are aspects of the one Brahman, which is the whole. And their supreme prayer, O Pramanada Pranamidam Pranamundashate Pranasya Pranamadya Pranavavashitate, means that there is only the one. Take away from the one remains. Add to the one remains. You cannot take away from or add to. There is only one consciousness. That's it. That's all we get, one consciousness. And then there's all the aspects of the consciousness, right? So each of these deities brings us a different aspect of humanity for us to really contemplate and consider and understand. And some people get stuck along the way to think that they're worshiping this one being, and that's their one being, that's their path, and that's okay. If people need that, great. I love Jesus, so I'm good with Jesus. I was born and raised with Jesus, Yeshua, and I'm with Jesus. And it gives me an access to the divine if I can focus on this one point, right? And it's like to think about one consciousness, this like in Vedanta or the Vedas, it's like that's too much for a lot of folks. And for people, they love it. It's like, bring it on. Let's talk metaphysics. Let's talk quantum theory. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of how this whole spiritual universe is put together. But for some people, by just having one access, one point to focus on, to have a devotional practice, a devotional heart, it's really important to them. And so I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. Okay? But so that said, now we're going to look at one aspect in Hinduism called Kali. And Kali is not necessarily, although she's looked at more like this goddess of destruction, she's actually the one who comes to bring liberation. So she's the one that's willing to face all of your darkness. Okay? So I don't care what body you have, and I don't care what orientation you have sexually around your body parts and in your own mental understanding of yourself. We have darkness within us, and that all the thoughts that are called errant thoughts. In Hinduism, they call it errant thoughts. I believe in Sanskrit it's called vasas, where we have negative tendencies. In every religion, in Christianity, we have sin, we have to miss the mark. All the places where we're not thinking for the betterment of the whole consciousness, of all beings, where we're in the arrested state of development, where we're in I, me, mine, right? Where we don't care about collateral damage, right? And that's an important concept, collateral damage. If we don't care about collateral damage, it's like then we're willing to do whatever it takes to reach our goal, and it doesn't matter who gets hurt along the way. We've missed the mark.
That's
We
right.
have lost the compassionate heart, right? So Kali is the ultimate embodiment of compassion. Okay, so we're looking at this crazy this crazy lady who's got this tongue and blood and skulls and all this stuff, right? And we're thinking, ah! But in actuality, she's the one who has more compassion. The most compassion. So much compassion that she's got to look like this because she's going to go right into the heart of your heart of hearts, into the deepest, darkest recesses of your being to root out all of the stuff that you have buried there. everything that is dark and insidious, every negative thought, every judgment that you've ever had about people. Remember, as soon as you judge, you've separated. You're in I, me, mine consciousness. The moment you make a judgment, you have separated yourself. And you are now in the ego of I, me, mine. I am better. You have now judged, right? So now you're better. You've created that separation. And anytime we make that separation, we can no longer be in compassion. We've lost the ability to be in compassion. We have to be in an integrated consciousness to have compassion. So Kali goes in to illuminate those places where we have separated ourselves from humanity, from our consciousness, from all beings, no matter what it is. It can be environmentalism. We can say it's the person who can only see the tree for the dollar sign. So they're going to cut the tree down for the dollar sign. They don't care that it hurts the owl or the birds or the animals or or the creatures that need the shade of the tree. There's no thought of collateral damage for cutting the tree down. The compassionate heart, thinking in whole for all, is going to take a look into the forest and say, okay, we need wood for fire, for build a home, all these different things. And they're going to say, but how are we going to get the wood without removing the shade for the creatures that need shade underneath? How are we going to get the wood to make sure in such a way that the creatures that survive off of that tree are going to live, right? So now we're in a compassionate conversation, but we have to, and there's a way, there's a solution. That's the funny thing about it all is everything that we're doing on the planet today, I fully believe without a shadow of a doubt that there is a solution that we can do it with the least amount of damage, collateral damage as absolutely possible. So there's sustainable harvesting methods, et cetera, right? So Kali's going to be the one to go in there and give you the mirror, and she's going to show you where you've missed the mark. Okay, that's her as a metaphor. And you don't have to subscribe to Hinduism to get the metaphor. You can do that work without ever having even heard of Kali. If you're willing to put the mirror up to your own face and say, where have I judged? Where have I made myself separate? Where have I made others wrong? Where do I judge myself? Where do I not forgive myself? Because unless we forgive ourselves, we still can't come into that fold in the one. We can't. How can we be compassionate with others if we haven't even been compassionate with ourselves? So we can now step away from that metaphor of Kali, because now we've just got some work to do. It's getting out the mirror. Kali just cuts off the head of the ego. That's what all the skulls around her waistband. That's the place where we have become part of the ego, the I, me, mine, separate. I'm better than you, and I will do what I need to do to survive, and I don't care about collateral damage. Kali comes in there and says, no, we're done with that. We can't work that way anymore. And now, off with the head. Okay, so there we go. Another ego gone. Put it on her belt. All right. So if you're lucky, you've got somebody in your life who's going to be your Kali. If not yourself, because sometimes it's too scary. But maybe you're lucky enough to have somebody who's really willing to be real with you, question you, judge, and just ask you if you're willing to take a look at yourself until you have that in your own mind. Is this a passionate action? Ultimately, it really is going to come down to each individual, isn't it?
It's interesting to me too that they ascribed the attributes that you're talking about to a female deity that could, Shiva has some qualities that are similar in that he has the sword and he will use it. He knows what needs to be cut down when it needs to be cut down. But it's a female deity that they ascribe this to, which means that she can bring life and she can take it away because she understands what it means to bring life. She understands what it means to hold that, to create it within her, to bring it forward, as opposed to using the sword, which is different. How would you say that those are different?
Hmm. Well, both Shiva and Kali. Well, Shiva has never been attributed to using a sword. He has the power of disillusion, so he can actually break down the entire creation. Okay, if we're gonna stick with the Hindu pantheon, but it's like, but with Kali, she actually does carry the sword, right? So she cuts off the head of the ego, and when the errant mind shows its way, and but either way, whether we're talking about Kali doing her project and Shiva's project are very similar. So I've seen Shiva also stand on skulls and things of that nature and whatever whatnot. So I'm not really sure that I know enough about it, and I'll just say that I can say that there's a vast what is the vast difference between whether Shiva is helping with this project, whether Kali is helping with that project. But what I'm interested in is these values. I'm interested in this way of being. I'm interested in how does that translate into our own individual lives personally, right? I'm much more interested in that conversation than discussing the nuances of all the different archetypes. The archetypes are great because they give us a basis and a foundation for jumping into these types of conversations, and those are fabulous. And then the next level, really, for me is how do we going to take that home? How are you going to leave this call tonight and take something with you that's going to actually support you in the direction you want to go with your life? Are you being the man, the woman, the non-binary, the trans, the whatever it is that you identify with? Are you being your being to the very best of your ability? Have you reached the height of your evolution? Is there more? What's it going to take to get you to that place? And I'm going to say that it's not even a place that you get to. I'm going to say it's a place that you will come back to because I believe that it's inherent within all human beings, no matter what our outward appearance or what we identify with it is. So I think it's a coming home that we're looking for rather than a going outward to get something. I think we're going to be finding it the more that we take a look inside.
Yes. And that's a good segue. So, what I'd like to invite everybody to do is to prepare themselves to do a guided meditation. So, make yourself comfortable, make any adjustments that you need to make to your body. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and start to breathe in and out through the belly. Really connect in as if you were breathing in and out through your navel. And you know this was the first place that we received nutrients from our mother when our umbilical cord was still attached. And so you might imagine that it's actually attached right now. Instead of attaching to your biological mother, it's attached to the center of Mother Earth. And imagine that everything that you've ever needed is coming through that umbilical cord, right through the belly. And you can use the breath as the facilitation for that happening right now. Imagine that with each inhale, you're drawing in something that connects you to a 6 billion-year-old planet who has a wisdom, a longevity, an understanding that far surpasses anything that you could ascribe to human understanding. And so just open yourself up to the possibility that something unfounded is coming into your belly right now. Something that you cannot qualify, you cannot reason with. It's almost eternal. An energy, a presence, a foundation. And you're breathing this in. And just be with that breath. And be with that umbilical cord that's going all the way down into Mother Earth. And eventually what you can do is simply drop all of your belly down into the belly of Mother Earth and just become one with her belly. And imagine that with each exhale, your heart, your love for Mother Earth, you're sending it down into her. And as you inhale, you're drawing up her love for you back up into your belly and up into your heart. And so you become one in this symbiotic relationship through the breath, in harmony with this beautiful planet. And your love is being sent, and your love is being received. Your nourishment is being sent, your nourishment is being received. And this is always within you. It's never left you. And you're just being reminded of it right now. You are in a perfect state of existence. Always have been, always will be, whether you're in a physical form or not. Breathing in and out, love and nourishment. Accepting and receiving this from Mother Earth and sending back down to her. These two principles of sending and receiving are in harmony in this cycle. Coming and going, sending and receiving, in perfect harmony with each breath. And when you're ready, when you have this container created in just the right way, I invite you to bring your awareness up into the center of the head and start to breathe in through the center of the head. Breath coming in and breath going out, right through the center of the head. And when you're ready, I invite you to imagine that there are branches growing out of the center of your head up into the cosmos, reaching further into the night sky, into the cosmos of galaxies, of stars, of nebulas, of comets, of asteroids, everything that exists when you look up into the night sky. And each of those branches is reaching further and further out and up into the fabric of all of creation. And each leaf on the end of every branch, at the end of every twig, is like a star in the sky. And you are connected to all of creation right now, right from the center of your head. And with each exhale, you reach out further. You see the branches extending out to the left, to the right, in front of you, behind you, up above you, extending out and weaving itself into that tapestry that we call consciousness. And as you breathe in, start to breathe that consciousness back into yourself and back down into the heart center, through the pineal gland, the center of the head, right back into the heart center. And start to feel the fact that you are part of this great tapestry of consciousness, and you are loved beyond measure because you are a product of creation. And be willing to be receptive to receiving that love from all of creation for you as a unique part of that creation. Creation could not exist in the way that exists without you. You are a necessary part of this fabric of consciousness, this tapestry of all history, of all time, of all space. And when you exhale, start to send your love out into that fabric of creation, that fabric of consciousness. Let all of creation know that your love is open and wide, and you are sending that love out to correct anything that needs to be corrected, to balance anything that needs to be balanced, because that is why you exist. You exist as a template by which the masculine and feminine principles can come into harmony and balance with each other. And so as you embody this notion, start to notice the cycle, this cyclic symbiotic relationship of sending and receiving out into the fabric of creation, your signature, the way that you are bringing things into balance, sending that out to that fabric of creation so that it can receive it, and then receive that consciousness, that corrected consciousness back into your heart center. And you now embody this balance, this harmony. And once you have established this cycle, I invite you to also start to include Mother Earth. You have two cycles going simultaneously from the heart center down through the exhale into Mother Earth and through the inhale back up into your heart. And through the exhale, your love out into the fabric of creation, and the inhale, receiving that love back into your heart center. You are these two things. You have always been these two things. Hold this reality within your heart center. Allow it to be open and receptive, and then send that love out. And as you embody this principle, send this out to everyone that you know. Send it out to all of your family. Send it out to all of your friends. Send it out to your community. Send it out to people that need your balance and your harmony. Be the person that embodies these principles through your thought, through your action, and through your simple presence and way of being. And when you're ready, take in a nice big deep breath and open your eyes and bring yourself back into the room, fully embodied in your physical self. This is the best day of your life because it's the day that you're living right now. So, the important thing, I think, to recognize for this moment is that the masculine and feminine exist within all of us. And we, as human beings, we express more of one than the other at any given moment. And for some, it goes back and forth. For some, it stays on one side. And this is neither good nor bad, it's just how it is. And when I was talking about shadow with you, Christopher, I was noting that the shadow exists as a part of consciousness. When we embody masculine and feminine principles, they each have beneficial and not so beneficial qualities to them. One sits in the light and one sits in the shadow. And the embracing of that in its totality is what brings us back into wholeness. When we recognize and can identify what we're expressing and whether it is in balance. And you can tell by another point that you made, Christopher, which was that I, me, my, when we're really focused on self, we can't be focused on others. And then there are those that are so focused on others that they can't be focused on self. It is a balance that we need to attend to our home just as much as we need to attend to our community. And that happens with human beings on an individual basis. We need to attend to our own inner home and then bring that quality out into the world around us. It's like the idea of putting the mask on yourself first. You need to clean up your yard. You need to clean your kitchen. You need to clean your bathroom. And I mean that figuratively. Before you can go out into the world and do something for the world. But let me ask you, Christopher, because you've done a lot of facilitation and a lot of coaching in this area, what would you say that people have to use as a healthy example of the divine masculine in the world, how do people find who's going to initiate us? Because they embody honor, they embody integrity. Like, how does somebody step out of the inner city and look for a good role model? How does that happen?
Man, if I had the answer to that, woo, we would be on the road to glory here. But that's really that is the question. And I think ultimately, as you were saying, we all have the masculine, feminine within us, different degrees, and we haven't even talked about hormone, balances, like the actual physical properties, of testosterone and estrogen. But it's by and large people who feel more masculine often have higher levels of testosterone, and this, vice versa. So with the same with the estrogen in the women. And we have people who have fluctuating hormone levels. So it's not lost on me that there's often a physical counterpart to what we experience energetically, right? And so I've moved away from our old conversation of everybody needs to be in this box or this box, you know, pick one, but you only get to pick from this box or this box. So we've moved away from that conversation to saying, okay, there can be as many boxes as you need to find what you identify with. So then the next question is how are we going to pass on values that help us to succeed as a people, as humanity, as cultures, as villages, as societies, and how are we going to agree upon what those things are, right? And I think that that's what's really in question. So it doesn't matter to me, what body you're in. I'm no longer in that conversation of, oh, you're in a man's body, therefore you have to embody these principles, or you're in a woman's body, you have to do these things. In the old days, maybe in one village the women were basket weavers, okay, but maybe on the other side of the mountain, in the next village, the men are basket weavers. So when we're assigning roles or we're gravitating toward one way of being or another way of being, I'm no longer as concerned about what you're identifying as I am concerned about what the values are that we're passing on from the adults to the children as they're becoming initiated into adulthood. That's where I believe the conversation is. I think it's really going to come down to values. Because it doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, binary, trans, whatever it is that you are, if we don't have values that hold a container of safety, compassion, accountability, honor, trust, respect, if we don't have those things present, then it doesn't matter who we are. We're lost. And so it's a matter of, when you talk about balance, I think I have to interpret that as equilibrium. you know like how do I stay in equilibrium with all of my parts, because for some reason when I think of balance, I look at I'm at the teeter totter again, and I'm like, well, we can't have everything in perfect balance. We can't, because it doesn't run the universe. That's why almost every major religion that I've studied has a unseen force that breathes life, the Holy Spirit. There's always third entity, right? Trinity, the masculine, the feminine. What's the third part, right? So there's the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. All trinities that exist with organized religions and traditions. There's this third entity that's kind of this unknown factor. The American Indians call Wakan Tonka the mystery, right? It's that which we can't put our finger on, but it somehow it breathes life. So it makes the movement happen, so that the teeter totter, and we have a good game down here on the earth. We get to play and have fun. We got to move. It's got to move. Something's got to move. if we have perfect balance, like remember the yin and yang symbol, yin and yang. You've got the perfect same amount of white and black, and then the little dot of white and black in each other, right? But it's a great symbol because it shows, yes, we have those positive and negative, masculine, feminine, all the different traits of this binary world existing within this symbol. But if it's actually perfectly balanced, there would be stasis. Nothing would move at all. We couldn't exist. So something's got to spin that thing. So when you were talking about how we're moving back and forth a little bit, so it's like, yeah, there has to be movement. We have to have a little bit more of one thing sometimes than another thing. And we have to get away from the idea that there's a bad thing, anything bad about that. We have to get uncomfortable, and we have to allow ourselves to experience change. Change, because without change we have no growth. It's impossible. And people want to talk about all the time, oh, well, we have to change this. We have to do this. We have to do this. You need to make this decision. You have to change. This is wrong, so we got to change it. And I see people thinking that things change, but they don't change. They evolve anyway. I've come to the conclusion that everything that we perceive as change is actually evolution. I know some people argue that with me, but I'll say that everything that it took behind the scenes, when you see somebody make a change in their life, I guarantee it just didn't happen overnight. It wasn't in that spur of a moment. Everything in their lives brought them to that moment. All kinds of factors were happening. And in their mind, they may think, I just, in the spur of the moment, decided I was going to change. But I will tell you that there were a million, billion factors that were unseen that brought that person to that place to where that change could occur. So that's the process of evolution. We evolve, and it's crucial that we do. And I believe that we evolve by doing things like what we're doing tonight. And so then the question is, what are those values that we're going to pass on? And there was a piece of your question earlier that I didn't answer, and that was, if people are I'll just say that testosterone is usually attributed to the physical acts of violence. Generally, testosterone can get very violent. It's a power, testosterone, right? It's a very powerful substance. And men who have a lot, and so what we'll see, like I said, we have varying degrees of testosterone in people. And so men who have a lot of testosterone, if they're going to be healthy, have to do something with that energy. And you were saying, well, what do people do? How do they exhibit healthfully whatever it is that they're feeling? And so if we have a structure of values that creates a container for that person to be safe and to be able to face that, if we're going to, let's just for this moment call that testosterone masculinity, or an aspect of the masculine, if we're going to say those traits may be masculine, or those feelings may be masculine, and I'm just, for the sake of argument and conversation, what does that man do when he has an abundance of that? What does that man do when he's feeling so much he doesn't know what to do with that? And in our old cultures and old ways, and the things that we've been exploring in our men's circles for some decades now, it's how does that man with other men vent what needs to be released so that he can remain healthy? And what I've watched happen over these decades is men developing systems within men's circles where men can come to vent their frustrations and their angers and their pains. And I've watched men who with tattoos and chains and leather, and men who you thought were just the epitome of strength and power, and like man, in a dark alley and say anything wrong to him, right? I've seen these men bawling. I've seen them crying like babies. I've seen them screaming their heads off. I've seen men holding them so they can just scream the pain that they experience of being a man. Whatever that is, no judgment. Until we come together as a society to create places for men, women, and anything else that you want to identify with to be safe, to be able to really bring forward your feelings, to vent, to grieve, to let go, to face, we will never be truly healthy. It's an absolutely crucial process in our human evolution and in our design to be able to maintain health and vibrance. Is that process of letting go. And it doesn't really exist in our society. So people are like powder kegs and time bombs. And next thing you know, the slightest thing that you say to them that triggers some trauma or some upset, and they're blowing up, and they're yelling at you, or they're going to get a gun. I heard the other day of someone who actually shot someone who told them to put a mask on inside of a store. This is a true story that happened. That's what's at risk. What's at risk is we're on the edge, living on the edge, because we got suppress, denial, suppression, and deflection. That's what's taught in our society, how you deal with your emotions. And we don't have safe places to go to be able to deal with those things. So what's going to happen? It's going to come out inappropriate. It's going to come out, and hurt people. But if we have a place, so I guess we're starting to, move this conversation more toward, well, what do we need to do? And I'd say that's one of those places we need to start, is having places where people can be safe. But we have so much judgment right now in our society that there are very few safe places. And my gosh, we're actually losing free speech rapidly. Well, you can't say that. You can't say that. Oh, this person said that. We're going to blackball them. Oh, you're going to lose your job now. You can't say that. It's a dangerous time. It's very volatile. At the same time, it's got all the ingredients for possibility. So it's a very powerful time.
I want to put out there really quickly that if you have any questions that you would like to ask, now would be a good time to put them into the chat as we get to the very end of our talk at 7:48 right now. And while I'm waiting for any questions to come in, I've got one more for you, Christopher, which is, do you see a healthy way for men to support the divine masculine in women, and vice versa for women to support the divine masculine in men?
All right,
That's going to be my question.
It's really my answer could potentially be very controversial, and you may or may not agree with me, and I'm okay with that.
Go there.
But I'm really I'm interested in people, whatever it is that you are primarily identifying with. If you're as a man, I would say to focus on being the very best man you can be, learning about what is masculine, what is the masculine, that. Because if we're living, remember what I said, I've separated, and we can disagree on that also. I'm okay with that, Sean, that we can disagree. I've separated the shadow part from the divine masculine and the divine feminine. I believe that the masculine and the feminine are in of themselves perfect, whole, and complete, only for our betterment. only for the betterment of all of humanity and creation. And I believe that anything that we would consider to be shadow is just those arrested states of development, those places we haven't evolved enough to actually be the true masculine or be the true feminine. So, answer to that question, I'm more interested that the people who are identifying with masculine to really take on the principles of the divine masculine. Find out what that is. Go to men's groups and men's circles and read books about it and find out what that is and embody that fully, right? And then for the people that are interested in the feminine, to do the same thing. And you have to understand that in the feminine, we always going to say that the feminine is more attributed to compassion, right? And nurturing and these kinds of things. It's why women make oftentimes better mothers and etc. But I tell you, I've seen some really compassionate men raise children, and I was a single father, so I did that as well. And what we talk about when we're talking about the compassion of men or how men are when they are in that space is we talk about masculine care. Okay, so it'd be the difference between a man doesn't want to see, or let's start with the women. The women, a mother would not want to see her children get hurt ever, ever. Generally, all the women that I've ever spoken with do not ever want to see their children get hurt at all. Like, it's the most worst thing in the whole world. And so you end up having like helicopter moms, and you have kids on leashes, and it's weird. It can, like, if you take that to the furthest extent, it can get really very constrictive, right? Because we don't want the children to get hurt at all. The man or the father just doesn't want his kids to get hurt too badly. See, that's the difference, right? Because the father knows if he's in touch with his divine masculine, he knows that every time that child gets hurt, but not too badly, that they learn and they grow and they evolve and they can handle challenge, difficulty, and adversity later in life. And we see these kids who've been raised with helicopter parents, and the second that they get away from home or they get through school and they get into a competitive environment and somebody says the wrong thing, or they get fired, or the boss doesn't like them, or there's a competitive cohort who stabs them in the back, and they commit suicide. And we have the highest rate of teenage suicide right now in our country that has ever been seen. And we didn't even get into only 50% of marriages last after 5 years at this point. And that's a true statistic. Breakdown of values. But if we're not allowing children to be challenged, to have pain, to like experience up loss, how are they going to ever deal with the things that they'll have to deal with as adults? If every child gets a trophy just showing up, how are you going to Mike Jordans who excel because of healthy competition? So these are some really, really important conversations to be had, and we don't have enough time to cover them all tonight. But I think it's really great that you all came up with this topic for us to discuss this.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing a couple of questions from Corky and from James, so I'd like to offer either Christopher or Sean. Does that mean boys should be spanked?
Well, I raised my son, and what I'll say is that I spanked my son twice in his entire life. So I'm not against spanking. I'm not for spanking. I'm saying that every child is different. I know children that have never needed to be spanked. I also know of children who they needed the physical reinforcement. I think it's a very individual. I think that if you lay your hand on a child, it cannot come from anything other than care. If you have any anger, you have no business. If you have any other issues, no business. But if you're in an absolutely clear place and you want to administer corporal punishment and it's the right thing to do because of that situation or that child, that there's I don't believe that there's anything wrong with that. We shouldn't have a law that mandates that you can or can't do that, or you must do this or must do that. But again, all of it really comes back down to the values that people are holding and carrying within themselves and within their family unit, and how well they embody those values with their children. And I think that the two times that my son got spanked, it was absolutely crucial for him. And that the second time, I think the first time he was, I think he was around maybe 6, and the second time he was around 8. That was it. That's all he needed. And it was just a lesson in boundaries. And all the words weren't working, you know. All the words were just landing enough on his ears. He couldn't hear me. And so that physical contact brought him into consciousness. And he was able to understand what was going on. But you can't use it for anger. You can't get your anger. You have to be healthy. Parents have to be healthy, and they have to know where they're coming from when they touch their children. And you can only touch your children with care, even if you're giving them a swat.
Oh, I know we have very little time left. This has been incredible, incredible. We have one more question from the other Christopher. Question for Chris Love and or Sean Emler. How do we show masculine care, love in a digital world for our youth?
You want to take that, Chris?
Well, I got the last one. I was just doing
Oh,
some
okay.
base.
It was for you and or me. So, but
I see.
yeah. So, but you know, I don't separate out uh, digital as opposed to non-digital reality. Um, they're really one and the same. There's one reality. That it might go virtual at some point, but it will still be part of the one reality. The one reality is love. We need to express more love, more understanding, taking more time out. I think one of the problems with kids right now is that our world is moved into hyperdrive, and we're not spending enough time with our children. And so the kids are left to themselves. I know this for a fact. Like I had no governmental body when I was a kid. I did whatever I wanted. It's a miracle that I made it out of my teens. I don't even know how it happened. And it wasn't because it was just because I had one parent, and I that one parent wasn't around all the time, and she gave me a lot of free reign. It did cause me to learn a lot because I got to make a lot of mistakes. And so, because of that, it gave me a lot of practical evidence of what works and what doesn't work. And in the digital age, uh, we still have the same problem, which is that parents aren't available. In fact, in a lot of ways, kids are being given their iPads and their cell phones, and they're like, here, entertain yourself because I don't want to spend any time with you right now. I'm busy. And that's a huge problem because then your child is going to have more of a relationship with a device than you. And so I think the critical thing is love. And love is going to cause you to make decisions that will accommodate more time with your children, whatever that looks like. So, and one of the things that's happened is that it used to be that when we were more tribal, there was a village that raised a child. You had grandparents around, you had aunts and uncles around. The child was surrounded by people that cared for them. Now we live in these nuclear environments where there's a little fence around everybody's garden, and the child is very separated from people in the community, people in the neighborhood, and that's a product of how we have prioritized financial gain and self-sufficiency as individual units rather than as communities. So that's where I would go. Christopher, do you have another thought on that?
No, I think that was well said. Absolutely. I think that opened up some great conversations. We could have a whole night just on the family in the modern age and things like that. I think but I just wanted to leave with just that it's really I'm grateful to be here, and I just wanted to say that. I'm really hopeful, actually. These conversations are happening. And I just want to leave it with that everything that we need, everything is here now. Everything to make this transition to sustainability as a human race. Everything to make it through all of our difficulties, challenges. It doesn't matter whether they're economic, political, environmental, socio, whatever they are. We have everything at our disposal at the time. It's a very magic, amazing time. And all the possibility exists for us to make this transition to a beautiful world. And the only thing that's missing in some is the intention. Everything else is here. So think good thoughts and
I
make good
just want to
choices.
thank you, and we just want to thank you, Christopher and Sean, for bringing these issues to our consciousness, to our awareness, and to allowing us to dive deep and to begin the conversation, which I hope will continue. And please join us at our Universal Church of the Master Education series. They're always on the second Tuesday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we welcome you to come and join us. And if you feel so called, please know that this particular night is being recorded. If you would like a copy of the recording, as I know a couple of the people that I had invited will definitely want, let us know and let us get it to you. And feel free to donate to our wonderful Universal Church of the Master. It's an amazing spiritual community that allows us to have these conversations and to hold all of it in that container and capacity of unconditional love. And I know what I'm going to do for my action step. I'm very much like you, Christopher. I need to do an action step. Okay. And so I'm going to make you a candle as well as give this candle to Sean, because both of you have revealed and given this light to us that we might spread it to the world. Thank you so much. And
Thank you,
thank you
everyone.
all for participating with your presence, with your energy.
Thank you all for this energy and elevating the consciousness, not only in this meeting, but in all of our families and the communities that we will continue to echo and ripple. It's been an amazing evening. Thank you for the invite.
And if you'd like to reach Christopher, he is open to further conversation. You can email him at coaching@christopherlove.org. And if you need to reach me, you can find me at sean@bluebearhealing.com.
Please take advantage of these two wise and wonderful men.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. And remember to do something fun and decadent just for you. We've had quite an intense conversation, so do something that gets you connected with life,
I'm going to go get masculine.
connected with play and fun and joy.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
The wisdom. Thank you.
Oh.